Hey everybody, this is Aaron Trevino. Welcome back to our channel. And in today's episode, we have a wonderful guest from beautiful Austin, Texas. We have Marcus Flores. How you doing today, Marcus?
I'm doing great, Aaron. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. No, it's great to connect. I know we've been connected for a little bit through Instagram and social media. And I'm glad we could sit down and chat and talk some Lubbock, talk some real estate, and it's great to see you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I know we've been connected for a while, and it's definitely nice to finally kind of connect face to face. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely, Marcus. So for those of us who aren't too familiar with you, would you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Marcus Flores. I currently live in the Austin, Texas area. I was born and raised here in Austin, Texas. Um, I went to school up in Lubbock, Texas, at Texas Tech University. And that's actually where I do primarily most of my investing. After I graduated from tech, I moved back here to Austin. I was working as a financial advisor here in Austin for roughly 3 years before I made the jump at the end of December 2020 into real estate full time. So that's kind of where I'm at now.
Okay. Solid. And I'm curious as well. It's funny when you said that you grew up in Austin, you're born and raised there. When you're in Austin and you meet someone that's born and raised in Austin, they have to let you know it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, I don't meet a lot of them anymore. A lot of times I'm in an Uber and I'll kind of mention that I'm, born and raised there in Austin or whatever. And you always get the, oh, you're a unicorn kind of thing, or, oh, there's not much of you left here. And it's like, yeah, well, I am. I still love living here in Austin. I don't see myself moving anytime soon.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's funny. I guess, life can take you in different directions, whether it's, college or trade or military or whatever it is.
Yeah.
For you, you went off to Lubbock and you returned back to Austin. If you wouldn't mind explaining what's special to you about the city of Austin that maybe you wouldn't get somewhere else in Texas.
Yeah. There's so much I feel like, but I think one of the biggest is just its live music scene. I grew up going to concerts and shows here in Austin. Austin City Limits is kind of like Christmas, every year. So that's one thing that I know is really unique to Austin. One thing that I like about it, I love about it, and I know that's one thing that a lot of Austinites love is that. And other than that, I feel like it's definitely growing a lot now. But growing up, it wasn't like Dallas or Houston necessarily, where it was just this huge metroplex, which I always loved. It was kind of a smaller city, and we still get kind of that vibe. It's definitely growing, but I think there's still kind of that charm to it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I remember the first time I went to Austin, I guess was for a football game, 2003.
Okay.
So I do
Yeah.
remember it being a little, less jam-packed, a
Right.
little more quaint, but I'm
Yeah.
curious as well, from your perspective, was there a particular time or I guess particular year when you really saw people investing in Austin or coming to Austin?
Yeah. That's let me see. I'll have to go back through the memory a little bit. Um, I want to say I think a lot of the change was starting to come kind of in like the around 2010, 2011. And then when I went off to college in 2012, that's whenever I would really start, I would coming back for holidays or whatever, or to visit my parents. And I would see the change almost every time I came back.
Yeah.
So I would say, that's whenever I really started to notice, okay, there's so much, activity, development, investment going on, here in Austin. And it hasn't slowed down at all.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Austin's interesting. I'd love to get your opinion on it. It's
Mhm.
almost kind of an anomaly. I mean, it's the capital, and then you have, a lot of, whatever comes with the capital, right? Political stuff.
Right.
You got people,
Right.
stuff supporting that, legal,
Mhm.
and then you have the university, and then you kind of
Yeah.
have everything else. So, what do you think the future of the city of Austin is?
I think it's going to be a lot of, it's going to be very tech driven. Um, we're already seeing that. Apple campus is being built right down the road from me over here off of Palmer and McNeil. Samsung out in Taylor. You got Elon Musk right here too. I think it's really going to be, tech is going to drive a lot of our economy forward in the next decade and onward. And then, not right behind it is our real estate market. Lots of opportunity zones that have already been developed, but there's outside of Austin, the greater Austin area, Round Rock, Georgetown, Pflugerville, you're seeing a lot of development out there too as well. So I think those are going to be two really big economic drivers for Austin.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the future is, very bright for the city of Austin. I'm excited to see what happens. And I'm curious about you as well. Maybe for someone who's not familiar with Lubbock, could you describe, where Lubbock specifically is and what kind of drew you to going to that part of the state for school?
Yeah, absolutely. So Lubbock is out in West Texas. It's a 5.5 hour drive from here. It's not necessarily the Panhandle. I think a lot of people think Lubbock is kind of thrown out in there in the Panhandle, but it's West Texas. I had a lot of friends that were attending the university at the time, so it was great to be able to go and visit them whenever I was deciding on a college. And I just, I fell in love with the university. It's a beautiful university, and for me, it was kind of far enough away from Austin, to kind of get a little bit of that independence, but close enough to where I could make a trip on the weekend if I wanted to. And yeah, back then, Lubbock's really grown, and we can talk about that a little bit more. But back then it was, a lot of people either loved it or hated it, right?
Yeah.
But I loved it. I was one of those guys that really fell in love with it. I still love that community. That's the reason why I'm investing there as much as I can. Yeah. I mean, you have to go and experience it. And I think now, with the way it's growing, you're going to have a really, really great experience out there.
Sure, absolutely. And I know before you had kind of explained a bit about Austin, the economy. You have, it's the capital, the university. You have a lot of tech coming in North Austin, Taylor. Could you kind of explain, what's driving the economy mostly in Lubbock?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, Lubbock is growing, and it has been growing for the past, 5 to 10 years. The main economic drivers that are there in Lubbock, when you look at the industries, there's very well rounded, and a lot of the industries are very economically resilient. So you have education, you have healthcare, you have agriculture, and you have energy. There's not a lot of metroplexes that have all four of those, that are thrown in there at the size that Lubbock is, right? When you look at Houston, they have great healthcare, they have great, energy, obviously. But when you see a smaller town like Lubbock and a smaller metroplex, there's usually one or two maybe of those really economically resilient industries, but Lubbock has four of them, and I think that's really what's driving them economically, and we're also seeing kind of more migration there into Lubbock, which is kind of helping with the population. I want to say that recently, they crossed that 300,000 population mark, which when you start looking at the data, that's whenever an economy really starts to kind of feed itself, right? It starts to really kind of take off. And so, yeah, like I said, those economic drivers are there. A lot of opportunity for small business. The cost of living is really low. So that's, I think, what's bringing a lot of that migration pattern towards Lubbock. I know a lot of Texas Tech alumni that are kind of within my cohort or within 5 to 10 years that, have left Lubbock after they graduated, but then ended up coming back, So it's really exciting. It's really exciting to see where it's going to go. You have a really bustling fine arts district there too. I think that's something that is really cool outside of like the, kind of hard economic industries. You have this really awesome fine arts scene and culinary arts scene. So there's a lot more that's being brought to Lubbock, more than just the strict economics of it as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I appreciate you explaining that for us because, it seems like if you go online, you go on Facebook or Instagram, or even just surfing the internet, it seems like everyone is talking about Austin, Dallas, Fort Worth, maybe a bit more about San Antonio, Houston,
Yeah.
but for some reason you don't hear much about Lubbock.
No, you don't. And I, I would say most Lubbock natives are okay with that, probably. you know, um,
Yeah.
but I love Lubbock and I love talking about Lubbock, especially with other investors and things like that, because there's definitely a lot of activity going on in Lubbock as well.
Absolutely. And just to kind of get down to the investing in Lubbock, is it mostly rehabs or opportunities for new construction, or what exactly is it?
I think there's really a lot of strategies that can be implemented there. Um, there's a lot of new construction going on around the perimeter of Lubbock. North Lubbock specifically is seeing a lot of land being developed out there. Um, but for kind of the retail investor, there's a lot of opportunities for fix and flips, rehabs, buy and holds. I know a lot of people that are, that have portfolios of single family homes. Kind of like that's how I got started, was investing in buy and hold rentals there in the single family space. So yeah, there's a lot of strategy I think that can be implemented there, but there's definitely a lot of, professional, institutional, new construction and development going on there. So that's definitely exciting as well, and I think that's kind of the proof of where Lubbock is heading right there.
Okay, solid.
Mhm.
And I'm curious as well if you could kind of break it down for us a bit. I know you grew up in Austin, you went to school in Lubbock. At what point in time did you actually start investing, and what really motivated you to say, hey, this is the route for me?
Yeah, so let's see. My parents and I, they decided to sell their home here in Austin. My dad had been living in it since the 1950s, and it was just too much maintenance, and so it was just time to sell. And I was fortunate enough that I had a really good friend of mine who, he was one of the smartest guys I've ever met in my life, and he was actually investing in homes there in Lubbock before he even graduated college. So he really kind of sparked my interest in it, and then we made our first purchase of our first rental in 2019. So that's whenever we really getting the ball rolling. Um, and yeah, so 2019 going on, 3.5 years now. It's crazy. Time
Yeah.
flies.
Yeah, and it's funny. A lot of times it comes down to maybe someone leading the way for you. Whether it's a
Right.
super bright friend, one of the smartest guys you've ever met in your life, or someone you just kind of run into one day at a coffee shop, and you
Yeah.
never know where it'll take you.
Yeah, absolutely. I was definitely blessed. He kind of sparked that interest in me, like I said, and I, kind of just ran with it.
Sure. And, when you say spark the interest, what about it was compelling maybe to other interests you have or other potential career paths?
Mhm. I think, it's probably kind of cliche to say, but it's definitely the opportunity for that financial freedom, right? Um, he was doing so much already at such an early age, where he had the opportunity to go off to Dallas and work for a big four accounting firm, or he was already doing so well with his real estate that he decided to stay there in Lubbock and pursue real estate. And that was just inspiring to me, to be able to kind of build something from the ground up, something that, you can support yourself on, and then build that lasting wealth throughout your life. I think that was one of the, um, biggest motivators for me, was just to have that portfolio that can give you that freedom later on in life.
Absolutely. And that takes a lot of, gumption or chutzpah or, whatever the gut, right? That
Right, right.
it takes a lot of guts to think that way, right? Kind of
Yeah.
foregoing, hey, I have an opportunity here with this big four accounting firm, but
Mm.
I'm going to take the road less traveled, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I mean, I definitely didn't have that opportunity outside of college. I wasn't going to a big four accounting firm. I was, leaning more towards financial services at that time, and that's what I ended up, coming here to Austin for. But yeah, he took a big leap, and it was really, really inspiring.
Yeah, absolutely, Marcus. And I'm curious as well, if you wouldn't mind explaining maybe your first deal and what
Yeah.
that looked like for you.
Yeah. So our first deal, so I partnered with a real estate agent down there, and he brought a deal to me that was from a wholesaler. So it was being marketed at a discount. So we bought it for $105,000 cash, and the ideal this was kind of the stepping stone into what we wanted to do. So really wanted to make sure that we had several exit strategies if needed. I think that was really our main priority, whether it was to sell it down the road or be able to refinance it and pull our money out. So we definitely went in there with a value add mentality. So we went in there, put in about $25,000 worth of renovations, completely gutted the kitchen. We renovated the bathrooms, new floors, new paint, things like that, kind of just all of the necessities. So we're in it for about 132,000. And then we rented that property out to a family for 2 years. And we charged them $1,500 in rent. That was around the market rent was around 12 to 1,500. And we were we were able to get the upper side of that range. And so with this particular house, we bought it all cash. We didn't use a lender or get a conventional loan for it. So it was cash flowing heavily, after that, which was great. But yeah, and then once those tenants moved out, we sold it for $155,000. So made a little profit on that end. It was great cash flow, and it was a great learning experience for sure.
Okay, solid. And I'm assuming,
Yeah.
kind of rinse and repeat, I guess, after that. Did you
Yeah.
kind of have deals similar to that, or you started to diversify, or what happened after?
Yeah. So after that, that's whenever we started really kind of utilizing conventional financing. We were a small portfolio of 4 homes was brought to us, and we decided to go ahead and invest in that using conventional financing. And so we bought those 4 properties, and we still hold those today. And then after that, I think whenever I really started to kind of picture out where we wanted to be in the next 5 to 10 years, that's whenever we started looking at other strategies like fix and flips or short-term rentals, and things like that. So we've now we have those properties still. We will still invest in buy and holds, single family out there. But right now we're focusing a lot on our fix and flips and rehab.
Okay, absolutely. And you brought up something interesting was the financing aspect of it as well. Was
Yeah.
you mentioned how seeking conventional financing, the first deal cash flowed really well. If you wouldn't mind kind of explaining, what's the difference between conventional and maybe private
Yeah.
financing, and then how would
Yeah.
that affect your cash flow if you're going into a deal like this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so financing is definitely a really integral part to any deal. When we went through conventional financing for those homes, we put 20% down on all of those properties. The interest rates, they weren't great. They definitely weren't what we were seeing in the past, 2 years. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But they still weren't bad. They were actually kind of closer to what's going on now here right now in the interest rate environment.
Mm.
So when you are utilizing conventional financing, that's a huge part of your underwriting. That's going to be a huge part of determining whether or not you're going to be positively cash flowing. So, as opposed to maybe doing private lending or things like that, we've never utilized any sort of private lender for our buy and holds because we want a conventional loan for 30 years, as opposed to like a short-term private loan. Usually they have higher interest rates as well. We use private lending mostly for our fix and flips.
Mm.
So in those cases, it's much different than the long-term buy and hold model. You have usually a much shorter term, higher interest rates. You have some origination points that you deal with as well. And then with a flip, you're not worried about cash flow. So, you're just trying to get that project completed as fast as possible. But conventional financing, I think, is great. I think leverage overall for something that's has a long time horizon is great. That was definitely something that I kind of preached, especially to, I have a friend of mine who wants to get into real estate investing, came to me asking, well, let me just buy the property outright, then it's going to cash flow very well, right? But if you're able to utilize financing and leverage, you can spread that capital across multiple properties rather than just one.
Sure. No, absolutely. And I greatly appreciate you breaking down the financing between private and conventional. And earlier, you also mentioned something interesting as well, was your goals, right? So you kind of talked about maybe you get into your first deal, you get your feet wet, you make a little bit of money, and then you move on to the next. And then you also mentioned how, you're looking to have those 5 to 10 year goals and stay on pace for that. I'm curious, maybe when you're brand new after you do your first deal, how do you even know how to set these goals?
Yeah, it's really hard. I feel like you don't really know at that point, right? And it took me a long time to kind of really narrow down and fine tune those goals. It's going to be kind of preference almost. It depends on what your investment strategy is. If it's single family homes, if it's multifamily, if it's fix or flip, right? But for me, I guess the best way to go about this is to give an example. I want to flip homes. That's right now, that's kind of replacing my active income, right? Flipping is not when you talk about real estate a lot, you hear a lot of, passive income, passive roles, passive this. Flipping is not passive. It's very active. It's, probably more work than a 9-to-5 sometimes, right? But you need something to supplement that income first. So that was, whenever I made that jump, that was my main goal, was, okay, I need to supplement my income. So that was kind of my main goal for that first. And then, in terms of long-term, 5, 10 years down the road, for me, it's kind of a number. I want to bring in a certain amount of passive income that's going to give me the freedom to do what I want, to travel, to run another business, to go back to school, whatever it is. So really, it takes a kind of a lot of soul searching. I think you really need to sit down and say, okay, in 5 years, I want to make $100,000 from my investments passively, and then you can break it down, right? You can really kind of reverse engineer that process. Well, how many homes will it take if I'm cash flowing 200 per home? How many am I going to need, right? So, and then once you have that number, okay, well, how much money am I going to need to put a down payment on each one of those homes, right? So I think it's really going to the end, and then you reverse engineer it from there. Hopefully that helps. I know that was kind of long-winded, but like I said, I think it took a long time for me to kind of really figure out the goal setting strategy and really putting, taking action on those goals. That's the biggest thing I think that you can do, is take action on, for sure.
Yeah, you said two interesting things there. The first was reverse engineering, right? So a
Mhm.
lot of times we don't really think of it that way. We think of things, I guess, maybe in a linear way, but you don't think about what's my end goal, and then how can I reverse
Yeah,
engineer from where I'm at right now?
right. You can run in place and not go anywhere if you don't have a goal, like um so it's really important like to, especially when you're starting off, not to just do deals kind of endlessly. You have to, you're putting all your time and energy into them. You need to make sure that they're working towards those goals.
Yeah, no, of course. And it's neat that, you would have never had this insight had you not gotten started, right? So it really took that first deal, 100K in cash, you put 25 grand into it, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that would have never come had you not gotten started, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think, you see it all the time, the term analysis paralysis. And I think a lot of people get caught in the kind of education trap where they're just constantly reading books or listening to podcasts. But,
Mhm.
you'll learn a lot quicker once you jump in. You're kind of forced to, in a way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's a lot to be said for, for just getting started, right? I mean, you can, like you
Right.
said, just kind of tread water or jog in place, but at the end of the
Yeah.
day, gotta do something.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely, Marcus. Well, is there anything that you haven't said for us that you really just like to hit home?
Let's see. You know, Gosh, you're so good at this hosting position. It's for me, it's sometimes hard to just kind of spew it out. But I really appreciate you bringing me on here, Aaron. You know, um, I think if I could, I'd love to kind of give you an idea of what I'm doing right now with my brand and kind of this fix and flip strategy that we're doing. We're operating in Lubbock in Austin, Texas, and this year has been really kind of building a brand for ourselves. And so, I've put together a property solutions company, and we go by Elm Property Solutions. Um, and we're really trying to kind of reinvent the image behind professional home buyers and flippers, because I feel like sometimes there is a negative stigma behind them. You do see a lot of aggressive tactics within this space. There are investors out there that are really trying to get a home for the lowest possible price point to inflate their margins and things like that. And our work is really centralized around our clients and really providing a solution for them. And that's something that we pride ourselves on. That's something that we want to really kind of concentrate on in this industry. We, I care really, I care a lot about these communities that I one grew up in and one that shaped me into my career into kind of the man I am today. And so, when we're investing in these communities, we really do take that to heart. And we're, like I said, one, trying to provide solutions to these clients, and then also, trying to add value to these communities while also, just maintaining the integrity and the charm of the communities we invest in. So that's kind of my spiel. That's what I'm kind of doing right now. Um, and then who knows where we'll be from there. That's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that explanation there. And there's a lot to be said for kind of, dispelling those myths about home buying and I know what you guys are doing is pretty solid, and I'm excited to see what you do in the future.
I appreciate that, Aaron. I really do, really do. And like I said, thanks again for having me here. It's been great to talk about real estate and, talk about my company and get to know each other better.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of us who are looking to get in touch with you, maybe we're in Austin, Lubbock, out of
Yeah,
state, wanted or even just connect with you, where can we find you?
absolutely. Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, Marcus Flores. And then, that's kind of my personal page. Um, but Elm Property Solutions is on all social media, Facebook, Instagram. We're on LinkedIn as well. Um, that's where you can kind of find, anything to do with that company and kind of follow along with with our future projects and our past projects and everything there, we're going to try and provide a lot of educational resources for our clients. One thing I forgot to mention is, I mentioned earlier that I worked in financial services and being a financial advisor. And to me, I really enjoyed that gig too, because I was able to sit down with families and really kind of hash out their financial picture, right? And provide them with some guidance and advice. And that was something that meant a lot to me. And so I'm really trying to kind of join those two industries with this company. Any client that we work with is going to have resources for a financial advisor there in Lubbock or in Austin or wherever they are. We're going to try to connect them with a certified financial planner that can kind of give them some advice, whether they just sold their home, and came into, a chunk of money, or they just bought a home, right? And they need to prepare for the future. I think that's really something that's important for everyone, is to have a clear financial picture. And that's something we want to provide our clients as well. So little extra bonus there on our company and stuff. But yeah, we're on all social media. I'm on LinkedIn. I can be contacted on there, and I've got, my phone number and my email on LinkedIn as well.
Okay, solid. And, we'll have that info in the show notes. Well, Marcus, I appreciate you coming on the show. I learned a lot about, Austin, Lubbock, a bit about you, your background, what you do. Excited to see what you do in the future. And, thanks again for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. I really appreciate it. It was a blast. Hope to talk soon.
All right. Thanks.
All right, man.